raw cakes and sweets. Her cupcakes, I don't know what's back there, but they're amazing. So we want you to take part in that. And also we have personal water. We're getting fancy. We have Mr. Sean Gideon with his 1186. So if you're, I'm sorry? All free. Everything is free. So if you're parched, even if you're not parched, take an 1186 bottle of water and some cupcakes. Oh, I'm sorry. And also, too, if you don't mind, just putting your phones on vibrate so that there's no interruptions during the presentation. So I want to just get started by just talking a little bit about the founder, the amazing founder of History Hidden in Plain Sight, the Angelique Robinson. Can you just... pleasure to call her my best friend, more like a sister. And we've been talking about this moment for so long. I've seen her in this light and so much further for so many years. Angelique is probably, no, she is the smartest person I know, literally. There is not a topic that she does not know about. I've known her since I was about 5, and I quiz her every now and again, and I just throw a topic out there. I'm still waiting for her to tell me I don't know. She has a date for everything. Well, you know, back in 1956. And I'm just like, what don't you know? She's passionate about what she believes in. She's passionate about her faith, and she lets it shine bright. I've never seen her cower down. You know, to anyone that is preaching or teaching false doctrine, she has such a passion for children, for education, and just for the rights of the common people. And in a world like today, when there's so many misconceptions, there's so many things that are being tossed to our children and just to us on a daily basis, it's really hard to kind of find that line of truth. And Angelique is definitely, her voice is something that is absolutely needed in our day today. And I believe that this is just the first of many events. It's going to be bigger than this, so I'm just going to speak it. And I told her you have no choice but to invite me to everything that you do. Because I want to be on the front row. I believe in what she's saying. I believe in her passion and her dream 100%. And I'm just so happy and honored to be able to witness this come forth. I'm so blessed that she asked me to talk about her. I didn't need a cue card to talk about her. I could talk about her with my eyes closed. So without further ado, again, thank you so much. So this is the first event, and our topic is the Miseducation of America, and I'm glad I'll have the opportunity to present the amazing Merle Rumble. So Dr. Merle Rumble. So I'll have that moment as well. But ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Angelique Robinson.
I just want you to know I paid her to say all this. I owe her a little extra for all the embellishment. But no, thank you all for coming. This is truly a joy to be here, and I'm just so grateful to see everyone here tonight. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. By the raising of hands, how many have read the Declaration of Independence? Wow, how many have read the Constitution? Wonderful. I just want to encourage all of you that have not read to please read these documents, because we cannot judge them or defend them if we've not read them. So tonight I want to tell you that America is a country like no other. Now I admit I have not studied every country, so I might be making a blind statement here, but what I have studied is pretty intriguing. One of the things that I've learned about this country is that our founding fathers had faith. What other country made up of just 13 colonies had the fearlessness to take on a country as big as England and have the audacity to write a document like the Declaration of Independence in the middle of a war and win? The Revolutionary War started in 1775 and ended in 1783. Who knows when the Declaration was written? You can just shout it out if someone knows.
76.
76, that's right. And so when I initially had studied this years ago, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think we all learned that, or I forgot it in school. But they wrote it in the middle of the war. They declared their independence. So now I will take the next 2 minutes, and I will do a 1 woman, 2 minute skit I like to call How America Gained Its Freedom. We begin with George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, okay? So George Washington is on this side, all right? I can't get in front. Thomas Jefferson is on this side. So we start our conversation with Thomas talking to George, okay? So, George, what is going on? This war started a year ago. Why are we still fighting? All right, bet. Let me go grab a pen and paper real quick, and I'll figure it out. A pen and paper? What do you mean a pen and paper? What is a pen and paper going to do to help the war? A pen and paper can do wonderful things. It's a very powerful tool in the middle of a war. So Tommy got busy and he wrote the Declaration of Independence, of course with the help of edits with some colleagues of his. So Tommy wrote the Declaration, and a few years later, we start with Tommy again, and he says, George, I wrote the Declaration of Independence. Come on, what's going on? We still fighting it. It's been years now. And George says, first of all, God inspired you to write that declaration. Secondly, my guy James Armistead, he's doing his thing on the Brits real quick. Tommy goes, what do you mean, we good? What big? Who is James Armistead? You know James Armistead. I never told you about James. He did his 007 move on the Brits real quick. They didn't even know what hit him. I'm telling you, there will be movies written about his work. 007? Who's 007? You know what? Enough is enough. I'm coming. Let me get off this ship. I'm coming. Slow your roll, my brother. I just got word the Brits surrendered. Well, I'll be. I guess this James Armistead character really did do his thing. God is good. And so I'm sure if you fact check, that's exactly how it went down. All right, so we know it didn't happen exactly like that, but James Armistead and the 007 move did. If you don't know who James Armistead is, let me just tell you, he was a bad mamma jamma. James Armistead was a slave who eventually won his freedom for his service in the Revolutionary War. Armistead provided critical intel as a double spy in the Battle of Yorktown. Now, Yorktown was the final and some argue the most consequential battle in the Revolutionary War. Now, you might ask, why would a slave fight for an oppressor? Could it be that he believed in America? Maybe it was that he just wanted freedom, no matter how it got done. One could even argue that Mr. Armistead only fought for Americans because America was the lesser of two evils. Regardless of how we look at it, we have to take into account that James Armistead could have very well traded on America, but I believe he wanted his freedom, and he knew that his freedom could only come from America. Now let's fast forward a few years and we come to this handsome guy. Let's take a look. It's my history crush, so I had to include him. This is Frederick Douglass. There is so much I could say about Frederick Douglass, but I truly don't have time. He was a self-educated man who escaped slavery twice to become the greatest abolitionist in our country. Can you imagine having been enslaved, locked in chains day after day, year after year, with no hope of any future, until one day you escape? For the first time, you feel the wind between your fingers. The sun feels different. The breeze feels different. The excitement grows all around you as you actually smell the flowers for the first time. All as a free man. My God, what a day that must have been. Frederick Douglass, oh my gosh. Suddenly, all of that comes to a screeching halt. It hits you. Your brothers and your sisters are still enslaved. When asked to speak at Rochester's Ladies Anti-Slavery Society, Douglass orated a speech entitled, "What is Independence Day to a Slave? To be free and to know others are still captive is a bondage all in itself. Because of this, Douglass fought to set his people free, but he couldn't do it alone. At first, Douglass wanted to move his people back to Africa, but after reading the Declaration of Independence as well as meeting with Abraham Lincoln, Douglass changed his position. It said it right there in the second paragraph. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that some men, that white men, that all men are created equal. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. After reading that, Douglass understood that this type of freedom was something truly unique to America. During this time, a controversial anti-slavery themed book titled Uncle Tom's Cabin, written by Harriet Beecher Stowe, stirred up so much trouble that it became one of the most popular books in its day, second only to the Bible. This book caused so much trouble, it was banned in some states. Miss Stowe risked her life and her family's life fighting to end slavery. Along with her book and the help of other black and white abolitionists came the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation. Ah, yes, the end of slavery. I was at an event in Manhattan, and I know you're saying to yourself, what does this have to do with slaves being free? Just stick with me, and it'll all make sense in a minute. It was a movie documentary. It was an opening for about the effects of transgender early in life. It was quite interesting. During this panel discussion, the gentleman presenting mentioned that the documentary would be available online Monday, June 19th. He said since it was Juneteenth, everyone would be able to watch it. A woman in front of me leaned over and asked her friend, "What is Juneteenth?" Her friend explained it to her. The woman then said, "Ugh, they always mean something." Listen, I don't think there is anything wrong with not knowing the holiday Juneteenth. For many, it's a new holiday. The problem is, many don't seek to understand what it is. When the Declaration was written, we can't forget that slaves were still enslaved. Fast forward to January 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation. Finally, slaves were free. Yes, but for some, it was the beginning of a new nightmare. I'm going to use a parable to make it relatable. Let's say you went to jail for a crime you didn't commit. Your sentence is life without the possibility of parole. After many years of hard labor, one day you are told they made a mistake and you are free to go. Patiently you wait, you excitedly pack your bags, and then you wait, and then you wait. But no guard comes to let you out. As a matter of fact, they act like you still have time to serve. Can you imagine how that felt? They know that you are free, but you have to wait 2.5 years before they let you out. Such was the case for the slaves in Texas and slaves throughout America. It wasn't until June 19, 1865, 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, that General Granger and his troops came barreling in with guns, forcing slave owners in Galveston, Texas, to let slaves go free. Juneteenth is simply a celebration of all slaves being set free, a celebration of Americans, men and women who were locked in chains against their will, finally being set free. Now, I've heard some say Juneteenth is a black person's holiday and claim Independence Day is a white person's holiday. I believe both are for all Americans. I give the example of Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Both are under the same umbrella of celebrating and remembering our veterans. Now, I've never heard a veteran tell a non-veteran not to celebrate either holiday. Now, you may ask, Angelique, why are we hearing of this tonight? Because we must recognize why hate is so easy to sell and why we are so easily consumed by it. Hate was the lie that caused Black Lives Matter to rise up to power so quickly. There should be understanding as to why many are upset, so that hopefully we can fix it together and move forward as one. Martin Luther King once said, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. There has been an injustice done regarding Black history. Because of this, I see generations of people buying a lie that America is the worst country on the planet, that its founders were evil. This is simply not true. Much of Black history has been hidden, so many don't know that many Black Americans did become very successful through the years. But unfortunately, so much has been hidden or covered up. Imagine, if you will, someone writing a biography on you, and they leave out some crucial bits of information about your life. They take out all the good stuff that was done, and they only include the bad. Now, they write their own story, or their own history, their own autobiography, and they include every single heroic detail about them, but they leave out all the bad. To add fuel to that fire, people say, you know what, don't even worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's just move on, move forward. Come on, pick yourself up. I think of Black Wall Street, one of the most affluent communities in the country. Not just in the Black community, but in America. Due to its hatred, it was destroyed. I also think of people like Hiram Rhodes Reynolds, the first Black man in Congress in 1870. Madam C.J. Walker, she's the one up top, these are her products here on the bottom. She was the wealthiest self-made entrepreneur in her day. So some people say that she was a millionaire, and then some people say no, but it would equal millions today. Regardless, she was the wealthiest self-made entrepreneur, female entrepreneur in her day, and that it was not Black, it was throughout all America. But much of this, and then there was also James Fortin, a free Black man here, who was a successful businessman. He was in the sailing industry, and he was a free man, but he fought in the Revolutionary War, but he also fought to end slavery. Most of this rich Black history is hidden and not taught in our schools. It should be taught not to divide, but to bring unity and teach our children how they themselves can overcome adversity and obstacles that they have faced in their own lives. Each example I gave, they believed in the freedoms of America, but they also understood the wickedness of slavery and the prejudice they faced should never be tolerated. We have deleted the Constitution from our history and instead teach that 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 and that math is racist. In the inner cities, we taught our children that they are victims to a world that hates them. Much of these children are being raised in chains to the government welfare systems, only for too many to be lost to a prison system that will throw them away. We've taken away the history that tells them they can overcome. We cannot miseducate our children and then blame them for not advancing. In this country, we are coerced to pay an exorbitant amount of money for colleges and universities that teach our young people to be angry victims who are owed something. You can major in courses on the singing group Beatles or Beyonce, but most don't even know how many branches of government there are. We've been taught that if you can't fit into one group of victimhood, then we need to make one up. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This includes the injustice of taking away history. And I'm not just talking about Black history. I'm talking about all history. It affects us all. In the same way many came together to stand against the atrocities of slavery, we too must stand in unity against the bondages that are being erected today. The sad thing is, many who hate our country don't know its true history. They don't know that slavery came from England. They don't know that many risked their lives and finances to buy slaves just to set them free. People don't know that many, including white people, gave their lives and their children's lives for the cause. They don't know that many Black people owned slaves. Yes, many free Blacks would buy family members so they could set them free. But history also shows us that many Black people bought and sold slaves for profit, and some of them were the most harshest slave traders in the country. There were so many that fought and struggled for your right to be free, for my right to be free. It took the brave ones to stand up against the horrors of slavery and not waver. They stood for the most vulnerable, so must we. Throughout history, we can see that kingdoms conquered kingdoms. We can all point fingers at one another, but the truth is, without a moral standard, we are all capable of the most horrendous of things. History is our wisdom for the future. It is our roadmap. It shows where we are headed, and if we look back at history, where we are now, we will see the path we are on only leads to destruction. We must reject political correctness, victimhood propaganda that is being fed to us. We must understand that racism and victimhood are tools the enemy uses to keep people divided, no matter what form it comes in, and we must not fall for it. Hitler used it, Stalin used it, North Korea is using it, India uses it, they use the class system. In fact, all oppressive governments used it in one way or another. Throughout history, mankind has been obsessed with power and using oppression to divide and conquer. America, today, we are rapidly losing our freedoms. We must stand for truth and protect those freedoms before it's too late. We must know the First Amendment and understand that free speech is free speech, even if it goes against your agenda and my beliefs. We must not let that happen. Now, this part is really important, probably the most important part. We must forgive the transgressors of the past and present, or we are stuck. We must understand the why, even when the story looks ugly. Know your history, but don't live there. Take the lessons and move forward. We are imperfect people, and the same grace and mercy we expect to receive is the same grace and mercy we must give. We must not carry a guilt that isn't ours to carry. One example is the statement that all white people are racist. I do not subscribe to that ideology any more than I subscribe to the ideology that all black men are criminals. We can go through each detail of history and live in the rage of the past, or we can look at the past and learn from it. Take the good but forgive and make sure we don't allow for the same mistakes. If we return hate for hate, then we are no better than the ones we say we hate. Please understand, hate in any form, whether we feel it's justified or not, only breeds more hate. And the only way to overcome that is with love, not emotionally driven anger, with truth, the whole truth, not tolerance. Truth is love, even when it goes against our emotions. I end with this. America fought for its independence from a tyrannical government, a king who controlled their speech. This is King George III. He controlled their speech, their religion. He took away their weapons so they couldn't protect themselves. A dictator who used hate to divide his country. In America's founding, many lost everything, including their lives, for this belief that one day all men could be free. But today, we are so free that we are fighting to give it all away. That's what miseducation replaced with hate does. Like a snake, it slowly wraps around you tighter and tighter until one day you realize its fangs have penetrated, but by then it's too late. I think of the snake in Alice in Wonderland, how the eyes in Alice, he was trying to wrap around her, and she just was so mesmerized. And then thank God, in the movie somebody came and got her out of it. There is so much more I wanted to fit into this speech tonight, but there just wasn't time. I leave you with this well-known proverb. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. And with all thy getting, get understanding. America, one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. If we unite together, we can achieve this promise that all men are created equal, but it starts with each of us. Lastly, these three things remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Love and truth, not hate, is what we need today. God bless you. Thank you.
So now you get to see why I go to her for everything. She just has a way of making you feel important, and it almost brings you to tears. One thing about truth, there's peace in truth, right? I'm sure everyone can feel the same feeling of calmness, right? Peace, understanding. That's what truth does, because truth is of God, right? And so when we walk in that, we walk in freedom. And that's what we really need today. We need to be free. Whether you agree with everything that she said or not, we all should have a place where we can think our own thoughts, right? Feel how we want to feel. And it really feels like there's one side that's being heard and truth is being smothered. But the amazing thing about truth is it will always survive because it's of God. So regardless of if you want to hear it or not, someone will cry out. And Angelique is one of those persons who will cry out and she will not stop. I know she won't. She has that fighter mentality, and that's what we need in this world today. So our next presenter is Dr. Merle Rumble, and I just want to read a few key things about her. One thing I can say, I've known her my whole life, and one thing I love about Dr. Merle is I can't remember a time that she was not in school. I don't know anyone who has attended school as long as Dr. Merle. I am a big observer, and although I may not say much, I see a lot. And Dr. Merle showed me that you can have a space to be a woman of God, educated, right, and in control of your own future, while still having a feminine mentality. You don't have to be butch. You don't have to try to run the world and push men out, but there's a place for us. And that's what I learned from Dr. Merle, that it's nothing wrong with being educated. It's nothing wrong with going after your dreams. That's all a part of the freedom that God gave us. So I just wanted to say that. Dr. Merle Rumble is a retired educator, having served in this capacity for 33 years. She is a lifelong learner and a lover of scripture. Dr. Rumble is a museum enthusiast, a gifted teacher, and is passionate about teaching the African Americans' journey, the struggle, the tenacity, and hope to everyone who will listen. Dr. Rumble is married to Reverend Michael Rumble, who is sitting in the back, and he is a leader and an amazing person in his own right. So without further ado, please put your hands together for Dr. Merle Rumble.
Thank you so much, Morgan, and I'm just happy to be here with you tonight. I'm doing a couple of things a little differently, so bear with me. So thanks for the opportunity, and I'm excited to be here. Your presence to me tonight shows us that we do indeed need to have our African American history no longer hidden, but to be shared, understood, passed to the next generation. We must ensure that those things which once happened will never repeat themselves. And so Angelique has done a phenomenal job tonight presenting to us history. So come on, let's just give her a round. I'm also grateful because she did a phenomenal job doing a PowerPoint. So I don't have a PowerPoint presentation for you tonight, but hopefully as I share, I will be able to hold your attention. So to continue where Angelique has left off, I'm going to share tips and pointers as to a way you can pass on this history to those children you have been entrusted to. Let's strive to motivate and build confidence through teaching them their history. Knowing your history and where you come from helps you to understand who you are. We are all Americans, and all of our histories are important. Let's see what the poet Langston Hughes has to say about being an American. I too am America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh, eat well, and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll sit at the table when company comes, and no one will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. Poetry is a great opportunity to discuss and teach our history to you. Langston Hughes was a great novelist, playwright, poet, educator, and civil rights activist in his own rights. He wrote about the American journey in America. He wrote about past struggles, the present challenges, and the future hope. Langston Hughes greatly impacted history during the time that we know as the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance era was a golden age when Black writers, artists, musicians overtook Harlem, New York in such a powerful manner that they planted the cultural flag deep in the souls of this country. The fine arts became a means of expressing racial pride and pride of African American heritage. It also served as a cultural and social unifying force among African Americans. We as a people have impacted, as Angelique said tonight, we have impacted this nation and this world in every imaginable field of interest. The impact is still felt in America's culture today. We are a great people with a great story that must be told. Angelique has pointed out this evening that African American history has been marginalized. There have been times that it's been erased, and there has even been times when it was viewed as unimportant. But we know better. We know that this is something that must be taught. And as both she and Morgan said, we tonight are letting our voice be heard, and those of you here will go forth and let your voice be heard, because we want people to know this is a history that we all must teach. I'd like to take a moment to insert that we have been enslaved people, and we were enslaved for over 400 years, but that was not our beginning. Slavery was never intended for any people. It is the people who enslaved, it is people who enslaved people, and it was wrong when the Egyptians did it to the Jewish nation, and it was wrong when it was imposed on the African American nation, and it's still wrong today. And Sister Angel alluded to that when she talked about things that are still happening today. We can no longer allow any people in any way to be enslaved. But let's hear some facts. There is more to the African history in America than slavery. Statistics let us know that 12 million to 12.8 million Africans were shipped across the Atlantic Ocean. These people were brought here and from the motherland, as we know, against their will. They were sold, beaten, stripped of their identity, denied education, and forced to work from sunup to sundown. After years of forced labor, they were set free with no education, looked upon as second-class citizens, and denied their human rights. As I reflected upon these things, I could not help but to reflect upon a stanza from the Negro National Anthem, Let Every Voice Sing. And this particular stanza simply says, "Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place from which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our paths through the blood of the slaughter. Out from the gloomy past, still now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. Our story may have appeared gloomy, but we still stand. We're still standing, and I believe that there is a hope." Let me tell you a bit about myself and how I hope to be instrumental in bringing some hope into the scenario that could be looked upon as gloomy. As I share this story, I would like you to think about three important things. We all have a responsibility. Each one of us teaches one. Each one of us can reach one. And it does take a village to raise our children. So for just a few minutes, I want you to come with me and take a short journey with me to see something that really drew me to just want to really impact students with this story of African American history. And I focus on African American children at times because I think it's important for them to know their history. But I do want you to understand that I'm telling you tonight, or sharing with you tonight, that this is a history for everyone. So I don't want anyone to think what I'm saying, or as I'm saying it, I'm pointing a finger, because as Angelique said, that there were injustices, but we have to correct the injustices. And sometimes starting with the people that it's affecting, we have to start there and branch out. But I taught in classrooms, and I love teaching it to all of my children. And I would take time to share with them this history. But something happened that really affected me. And so I would like for you to go with me as I share with you this situation. I was walking around the classroom doing a group discussion. My students were engaged in conversation, and if you're a teacher, you know that when your students are engaged in conversation and they're leading the conversation on their own, that's always a great feeling. But as I was walking around the classroom and my students were having book discussions, I was caught off guard by 5 words of one of my students. And their words were simply, "I wish I were white." I had to double back. Did I just hear those words? The young boy's words cut me like a knife. I was speechless. In my mind, many questions began to roll around. But one question spoke very loudly to me. What could this 10-year-old African-American boy have already experienced in his life to make him feel that the color of his skin disqualified him and made him feel he was not good enough? The movie in my mind began to play, and I reflected for a moment on situations that had caused me to feel like he did. We've all been there. We've all had moments where we just did not feel like we were enough. That day was a defining moment in my life, and I've never looked back. I purposed that no child in my life would ever speak those words or feel that way again. From that day until this very day, I have researched, studied, traveled, become very knowledgeable of African American historical sites and history. And my mission is to share with others and empower them with history that is often not taught in school. So this evening, I am just going to share with you just quickly some few pointers that you can implement and you can use in the life of your child or children that are in your life to motivate, build their confidence, help them become knowledgeable about African American history. And I would say that if you have a history, the children in your life, you should help them to understand their history, because their history is great. Why teach African American history? Well, because it's an essential part of history. America was built on the backs of our ancestors. The struggle of the African American in our society was an integral part of American history. And I realize that there are some horrific tales and maybe some prejudice and racial issues, but as Angelique said, there has been some serious injuries, but we must understand that we cannot stop there. So the best way to remedy the situation is for us to learn about others' history so that we can learn to accept people as they are. I believe teachers, and more importantly, parents, should endeavor to teach their children in their lives about their history, because there are many travesties that occurred, but we must make sure those travesties never occur again. So there are a couple of things we can do. One, we can make sure we teach them their history. That is the responsibility of parents. It is said that the Jewish nation was instructed to teach their children about their history. In Deuteronomy 6, 7, and 9, it simply says, you shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk to them when you sit in your house, when you walk away, when you lie down, when you rise up. So basically the Jewish nation, who had a traumatic history, They taught their children about their history, and they made sure that even the world does not forget it. And even to this day, I just recently was in Cincinnati and had the opportunity to go to the museum, the Holocaust Museum there. And prior to that, I had the opportunity to go to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. And when you go in there, you see the history of what happened. They never want us to forget our history, and that is the same way we must do. We must impart our history to our children. We can take them to the library. We're in a library now. You can go around the world in a library. Take our children to libraries and allow them to take out books and learn about these people. Plan museum trips and encourage our children to ask questions. Number 2, you can emphasize the importance of education, and I think this is a major key. Education is a power. It unlocks doors of opportunity. We must encourage our children to be curious, to read, to explore, and to just allow them to just be subject to many things. Give them opportunities so they will search for knowledge. It was a struggle. They need to understand that we couldn't always be educated. It was a struggle. Many people lost their lives so that we could have the right to be educated. So it's like we must instill in our children a thirst for education, because education and knowledge really is power. Daily affirm your children. Along with the teaching of great history, we must always have a positive influence on our children. They must know that we are behind them and that we validate them. In a world that is sometimes hostile, as parents, we have to encourage our children, and we have to be intentional about pulling out the greatness that is on the inside. So all I'm doing tonight is taking the things the facts that Angelique has shared with us and teaching us ways that we can pour these things into our children. And there are many points that I could address, but the last one I want to share is be present. It is very important that you be present in your child's life. You must always be the one person they can come to and rely on. Be that listening ear and that shoulder to cry on. Be the role model and example you want your child to be, because you truly are your child's first teacher. So I'm not going to go on and on, but I hope that some of those pointers that I have, in fact, shared, you will implement, and around the children that you deal with, that you will begin to pour history into them. So just a backdrop, I wanted to teach my students about history, and I didn't want to just do the regulars, Rosa Parks, which all of these people are great that I'll share. Many of them Angelique shared with you tonight, but I didn't want to just teach them about Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King or Harriet Tubman, Malcolm X, Frederick Douglass. I didn't want to just give my students a bunch of worksheets and say, read this and then you'll learn about them. So in the summer of 2017, I embarked upon an independent tour of African American history sites across 9 southern cities to increase my knowledge in return, and I returned with a greater desire to teach this history with a passion that allowed me to be able to pour into my students in ways that were just phenomenal. Like we would do things sometimes in the class, and one time I had all the 3rd grade class in one class, and the teachers afterwards were teasing me because they were like, Dr. Rumble had all that, I think it might have been like 60 of them, but everybody was there, they were just kind of captivated. We had no discipline problems during that whole time, and it was just amazing. But kids will be like sponges, and they will draw the history from you if you do it in a way that is passionate. And I am so grateful because God has given me that passion and that great desire to want to do that. So on tonight, I just said that yes, the knowledge is on Google, and Angelique has given me this opportunity because I have a business and this is what I do. And it is called the Academy of Hope, where I have been allowed now this is what I do, to teach this history. And I was laughing as I was writing this. I said, yes, you can Google history on Google, and you can get that, but why not let me be your Google? So I'd like to give you for Angelique, because as she shared what she shared, it was connected, because now I can share as young people, because truly I believe that if we start pouring this into young people, we will be able to raise up a society of black, like Martin Luther King said, he wanted his children to live in a nation where they wouldn't be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And that, he saw the day when children of all colors would be able to join hands and walk together as brothers and sisters. So the only way we can do that is that we teach the history. The only way we can do that is that we teach children to accept one another. And yes, when we look at the African American history, there were a lot of travesties, but we have accomplished so much. And we have to allow our children and all children to know that and understand that. So I'd like to invite you all, and actually tonight I'm launching, and Angelique has given me this permission, so she did a wonderful job, but I am launching my business, and I'd like to invite all of you to go to drrumble.com. It is official, and you can invite you to do that, and I'd like to, if any of you are interested, I'd like to stay connected, because in the year 2024, I do plan to start doing trips where we will actually go to some of these places, and so I know Angelique will be a part of those trips, so I hope maybe some of you will too, so she'll be able to connect to you, and you can be a part of those trips. So as I close, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and we do have some of these business card, little pen that we would like to share with you on tonight. So I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to share with you Academy of Hope and how we can empower our youth to know their history. I end as I begin, in the words of the great American poet Langston Hughes. Tomorrow, I'll sit, our children will sit at the table when company comes, and no one will dare say to them, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful they are and be ashamed, because they too are America. Well, that tomorrow is today. Make sure your child, our children, have a seat at the table. Teach them their history. Build their confidence, because they are valued, they are loved, they are needed, and truly, they are beautiful. Thank you.
This has been such an amazing evening for me. I'm going to take it personal. I know everyone here feels the same way. I definitely will be leaving here just full and just kind of having some direction as to what I should do with my own children. Because if they don't know, then the direction is going to be very hard for them once they get out on their own. So thank you again. Can we please put our hands together? So again, I just want to remind everyone, if you have not signed up, please take a moment to sign up and jot down your email so that Dr. Merle Rumble can stay connected with you, and also you can be updated as to whatever further events that will be taking place, because this is going to warm up and it's going to get really exciting really fast. And also too, if anyone has any questions for the two presenters, we want to take this opportunity now just for you guys to get any questions that you had answered. Does anyone have any questions?
I was just wondering if after listening to Angelique, if you've experienced racism, which you probably have, but what else about your various...
Oh, thank you. they're from a company, and I'm going to butcher the name, but Enid & Co. Yes, Enid & Co. They are, I love them anyway, so thank you. So your question was, have I experienced any racism in my life? So that's kind of a two-part question, but first I'm going to answer that. But the word that Dr. Merle spoke about, that child that said in their life, I wish I was white, she was not talking about me personally, but I said that in my life. I grew up in a town close to here, and when I first heard her say those words, it hit me, because I remember my own childhood and how I wished so hard that I could be the same color, white, as my peers. And I thank you for sharing your story. Yes, I've experienced racism in my life, but I will also say that I've experienced it on both sides. So if all of you who don't know, I am half white and half black. So growing up, I've been called the N-word and all those things, and been stopped by the police a few times. And I am a supporter of the police, so I don't say that as against the police at all. I definitely believe we need our police officers, but absolutely I've been pulled over. My brother, who was here one day, was pulled over 5 times in one day. So I was, but as I got older, I definitely experienced racism for being white. I know I have color on my skin, but I was very much ridiculed for both. So I think it's something both sides need to address, and that's why I think evenings like tonight are so important, and we need to have education for both our black children and our white, our Caucasian children. Yeah. So yes, I have. Yes, you can.
Dr. Merle, have you always had a passion for Black history, or did it develop as you got older? Is it something that you've always been interested in?
I'm going to try to give a short version of that.
You have to come over to the mic. I'll repeat the question, so
I was asked if I've always had the passion for Black history. Grew up in a home where I was taught it, and I was around successful Black people and African Americans, and so my family, some of my aunts and uncles were teachers and professors at colleges, so I had that side of it. But I do remember that after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, we had this thing in Norwalk where the African American educators brought all the kids together. I guess it was probably on one of his days to celebrate. It was probably the very first one, the year after. And they began to teach us about all of these African Americans and famous things that they had done. And I was probably in about the 4th grade. And I remember I went down and I got paper, and I had all of this paper together, and when I went home, I had all of these notes to show my mother that, like, these people were telling me stuff. I was like writing so fast and on all this little paper, I had all these notes. And from that point, it built and it built and it built. And so I think that that's how it has happened, and I study it, and I love it because I know that it makes me understand who I am, and it always gave me the desire to push, because I understood the sacrifices that were made for me. And I will stop with this. I found that as I did this with my students, and like I often said, even when I was working on my dissertation, and my work was I Too Have a Voice, the literacy experience of African American boys using literature that would help them see themselves. Basically, that's what I focused on. And as I said to my committee, that I teach all people and I love all people, but I have a passion for my own. And so what happened is, as a teacher, I wanted to always have multicultural books in my classroom, because I wanted all the students in my class, Whether you were Hispanic, whether you were Asian, whether you came from China, wherever you came from, I wanted you to have a book that mirrored you. And I think all of that helped to fuel my desire, because it did not just end up focusing on African Americans, but it ended up focusing on all children, because I think Sister Angeline had something up here about the stories. If you're only teaching them one story, then it's not worth it, because you have all these kids. Everybody needs to know this story. And so, and I don't know. And things would happen in class with my Hispanic kids, and I have to say that they would stop me and say, well, Dr. Rumpel, if that was happening, what was going on with us? And I have to say, you see what that sign says? White only. That meant you couldn't go in there either. But we all, and then we teach them in school, but we all work together. Look, years back, we wouldn't have all been in this room together. And that's what I tell my kids. We wouldn't have all sat around this rug in group times, but because somebody struggled and brought about those changes, we can.
Anyone else have any questions?
Just a comment. I think it's so important what you both are doing, and I say this because I meet with people on both sides of the fence, all walks of life, and there's a lot of people who don't think that racism or prejudice exists today, and it does on all walks, with everybody. And I'm going to include everybody in here as well. To some degree, one shape or another, we have a little bit of not understanding of another person's culture or another person's religion or ethnicity, and I don't take heart to that, or so much as it's their own demons that they're battling with. What I love about what you two are doing is you're really educating the world, saying, teaching everybody about the truth in history, and not turning a blind eye to it, even to what exists today. And it exists in our police departments, and it exists in our court systems, and that is more important than you guys could ever imagine, because I used to work with the state police and former military, and I see it today just as much as I did 25 years ago, working with judges, attorneys, and just be aware that we live in our bubble, but what you guys are doing is wonderful. Thank you.
I just want to say, that's my brother. I did not pay him to say that. But I'm grateful that he did. He came all the way from Florida just to tell me tonight. And he didn't know what I was going to say. I refused to share the presentation with him. So thank you for that.
So I myself am in education, and I find it hard to engage our children and my own children when they are battling things like social media and the internet. So and this goes to either of you, any strategies or recommendations you can give me to kind of help or assist in order to let them know, like, history, what is in the back of it?
I think if you sign up with the Academy of Hope.
For the sake of this evening, and by all means, please know I'm not the perfect person to answer this. But I just in short say that you kind of have to do those kind of things that engage them. And I don't know if you're talking about in the classroom or with just your students, because in the classroom I would use literature, and there's some great literature out there. So from me reading a story, but because I had the background to the story, because I studied it and know the history, I could read aloud but then I could bring in PowerPoints, because I travel to a lot of places, so I bring in PowerPoints, I'm able to tell them the story behind the backdrop behind it. And another thing that I used a lot in school were plays. I have a lot of plays about African American history, like I have plays about, about the Central High situation, many of the famous people. And I would use those plays, and so we would sit and we would share those plays. We would do them like read-alouds, but I would couple the plays with maybe read-alouds, and then I would also bring into my class presentations. So I was hitting a lot of modalities at once, and the kids would go home and talk about it, and their parents would come in and they'd be like, "You're my kids," so I think that those are the kinds of things that engage them in hands-on things. So that's just some things. I hope that helped.
So we have time for one more question. If anyone has a question before we close out. Thank you all again for coming. Thank you to our presenters, Angelique and Dr. Merle Rumble. I'm pretty sure that all of you will be taking something, a nugget or two home with you. And I just want to leave you with this last little thought that in no way are we guilt shaming or should anyone leave feeling down, because the worst thing that we do now that we see a lot in the news and the media is the only way white people can be accepted is if you feel guilty about being white. But in reverse, that's the same thing that was done to us. So no, you shouldn't feel bad about being white, and we shouldn't feel bad about being black. We should all love each other and use our resources to work together. We love you, you love us. God bless you guys. Please feel free to
Not like these two.